I know Rob would like to see it.
It's multitasking. Had to switch out of one Google to another, so it's all happening while I'm talking.
Question. I've checked for minutes. Was there a meeting in December? There's no minutes on the site, so I'm wondering if I'm looking in the wrong place.
The minutes are posted generally when they've been adopted by the committee. So if they would not have been adopted yet, but I can share those minutes with you if you'd like.
Yeah, because I think there was a meeting like this in December, from what I understand.
Oh, like an information meeting? Sorry.
Yeah, but maybe not. I could be incorrect. I wasn't in the country, so I'm not sure, but I feel like I'm missing something.
We're not doing substantive minutes for these meetings. These are just there's recorded and there's an opportunity to speak to people, and there's a record that opportunity took place.
Great.
Yeah, it's an info meeting.
Thank you.
But the meeting is recorded, and if you want to watch it, you can go onto the YouTube channel and watch it. And
okay, it's not in the package on the Bluewater information update. That's what I'm saying. It's not there. It's like it didn't exist. So I'm asking if it is somewhere else.
Oh, you know where it's going to be? It will be in the committee's page. I can send a link to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because everything else is there except for December, which that's all I needed to know. So if you're keeping them in multiple places, I'll spend some more time looking elsewhere.
That's a good point, Steph. Maybe on the project page, we should have the links to the YouTube info meetings.
Okay, I will do that. Speaking of which, I'm just having a heck of a time with YouTube at the moment, but we do have a backup I can upload. So Patrick, please go ahead.
Okay. I'll just share my screen.
What's happening?
It's taking a while.
Is he talking or?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and the screen is sharing, but it hasn't arrived yet. There we are.
Okay. So this is an update to the project from the last meeting we had, which was, I believe it was in December, which was just being discussed. And at the time, we were talking about the well exploration that was going on in the large property that's intended to be subdivided, that's owned by Ian Stewart. There was some very promising early assessments of that well, and there was some question about whether that well alone could resolve the supply gap in Bluewater. With the more detailed and rigorous testing, it was discovered that that capacity of that well is less than previously expected. Has a sustainable yield of about 9.5 US gallons per minute. So enough for the development, the build out of that proposed development, but not a lot of extra beyond that. So we are back to Plan A, which is the upgrading of the Bowen Bay wells and the interconnection of the systems. So essentially pumping from the Bowen Bay wells into the King Edward Bay tank and then supplying all of the systems from there. So the tender documents, they are complete. The construction permit from Vancouver Coastal Health is in place. And we're just looking at, in terms of the tendering and constructing that project in order to improve the chances for better pricing and to be as cost effective with this project as possible. We're looking at tendering in March and April, combined with the water main projects in Bluewater, as well as the water main project proposed in Eagle Cliff. And so that's, we've just got draft tender documents for those water mains now. And so we're looking at getting that tender process going soon and being in a position to construct these projects in summer and fall of 2024. That's for the water supply upgrades, that would be a priority for the contractor that ends up being hired. And then the water main replacements, as I mentioned, the design is nearly complete, tendering on the same time frame, and then looking at a phase construction, which I'll show on the next slide, which is the same, proposed phasing that was discussed at the last community meeting. But the first phase of construction would be this year, and from May to December, and then the phase 2 construction in 2025. So essentially constructing the east portion, or the west portion, southwest portion of the water mains in 2024, and then the northeast portion in the following year. A big driver for that is the cost of the culverts that are integrated with the water main project. So those are funded from general municipal funds as opposed to the local service area borrowed funds. And there isn't enough budget available to complete the whole project in 2024. So it's proposed to be phased over 2 years. So that's a summary of where we're at and where we're going at this stage. If there's any questions, happy to address those.
Thank you for the update. I just, in terms of timing, I'm curious. We're already in March, and if you're, sort of going through a tendering process now, essentially now in April is what you have on your presentation, with a construction in the summer and fall, how realistic is that expectation? Is there a preferred provider that's ready to roll on such a small project?
Well, it's not a small project in that it's combined. We're tendering the water mains, Bluewater water mains, the well upgrades and system interconnection, as well as the water main, the proposed water main connecting Eagle Cliff to the Cove Bay system. So it is a pretty large package of work that we're hoping will generate more interest in the market. So no, we don't have a contractor in place or ready to run. That would be coming out of the tender process. We would be selecting somebody.
Yeah, I guess Eagle Cliff does make it slightly bigger, but I mean, relative to other capital construction projects on the mainland, Bowen is quite small. But I'm just wondering really how realistic that timeline is, because it is tight in terms of expecting somebody to come and do the project. So if it was to be pushed out, because stuff like this isn't generally done in the winter, is it?
It can be done in the winter. Yeah, the main component that really needs to be done in the summer are the culverts, which are sometimes, depending on which ones, they're limited to a certain window of construction in the summertime for both for constructability. It's much easier to do in dry weather, and then also for fisheries protection.
Right, right.
But the water main work can be done year round.
Okay. It was disappointing about the Stewart well. So that, I guess that would lead into another question I had just regarding moratorium on construction and new builds in Bluewater. Is that property then exempt because they've got water that seemingly would supply themselves, and the rest of Bluewater is still under any kind of moratorium to build anything new?
Well, that property would be required to supply its own needs, plus some additional to contribute to the overall system. It's quite far from actually building any units. He's just proposing subdivision plans at this stage. So it's a couple of years away from actually having anyone, well, at least a couple of years away from having anyone submit any building permits. And certainly the water needs to be in place before that can happen.
So Patrick, do you have a sense of what kind of development could be supported by a 9.5 gallon per minute well?
You mean like how many units or
Well,
how many
units?
houses?
Yeah.
Certainly the scale that's being proposed is something in the order of 30 plus units, which is the 9.5 gallons per minute sustainable yield is more than enough for that scale of development, and would also be, particularly in the early stages, it's going to take several years for that to build out. There would be contribution to the overall Bluewater system coming from that well.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually not the early years that concern us. It's the later years when everybody's there, and we're suffering from, droughts and what have you, and their contribution may turn into a deficit, which we have no provision for. I mean,
I mean, the resilience piece of it that you're talking about, does this now change then the plan to continue any sort of exploration around other water sources? I mean, there's Bowen Bay, the Stewart well doesn't add that additional resiliency that we're talking about. So will that be added back onto the project?
Additional exploration? I think that's something that we would still be interested in, whether it's in collaboration with the developers. That would probably be the most likely approach. The plan would be to build a new reservoir for the Stewart property. That would be required in order to develop a large portion of that property. And then there was discussion about exploration and development of a new well up by that reservoir site. There's also been talk about additional well for phase 4 of the Arbutus Ridge development. There's also the well on Ian Stewart's other property on the south side, or the south side of Arbutus Ridge, which we know does have reasonable capacity and could be brought online. The intention was to do that in conjunction with the phase 4 of Arbutus Ridge. I don't know what the time frame for that is. I don't think they've sold as much of their phase 3 as they've been hoping to at this point. So it's phase 4 has been pushed. And then there may be other opportunities that we want to explore as well. So I think, yeah, keeping options open for additional well capacity and the resilience that goes along with that is on the table.
We do have this is Ian Stewart. We do have one other well that we drilled. We drilled 3 wells. 2 seem to be tied together in the same aquifer, but the third one is independent. We haven't run a test on that one, but it's in the lower ranges, but around 2 or 3 gallons a minute, which maybe doesn't sound like very much, but if it's a 24-hour well at 3 gallons a minute, I think it rates out to about probably enough water for about 15 households. So that well is already drilled and could be brought in online with the same treatment process that we're proposing for the primary well. The primary well was going to run at 20 gallons a minute. What's been proposed by the hydrologist is 20 gallons a minute, 5 hours a day. And to relieve anybody's fears, that well really is, it's 9.5 gallons is what we have to call it based on the provincial regulations. And but it produces substantially more water than that. But we have to rate it that way. So the plan would be to pump that, and the design and filtration and chlorination is going to be based on a 20 gallon a minute flow rate. So that in future, when we bring on this second well, which is about, we're thinking will be around 3 gallons a minute, we'd have plenty of capacity during the other 12 hours of the day to pump that. And as Patrick had mentioned, as we move towards putting in a reservoir for the property, then up higher up the mountain, we were anticipating drilling for more water up there. So right up at the top, kind of what we found is if you get too close and when you're drilling, then you hit the same aquifer.
Yeah.
So the next one wants to be further away. But that would be sometime down the road. The existing water is enough water to service, if you do it based on the municipal calculations, enough for about 47 or 48 homes. And we're not going to see that for, a very long time. So there'll be an incredible surplus for Bluewater. As far as I can see, Patrick, you can comment, but I think there'll be a substantial surplus for Bluewater for the foreseeable future. And by the time we get around to doing the next phase, we'll be drilling again. So I anticipate that, and what we'd always plan to do is to bring more water to the table than we take away. And so we'd be drilling again once we move up the mountain.
Thanks, Ian.
And Patrick, you're in sync with this. It's a 20 gallon well, but we're only going to call it 9.5. Can you explain what that's about, please?
Well, the 9.5 is a sustainable yield estimate. So what Ian was talking about was, pumping it at 20 gallons, but not continuously.
Right.
And so essentially for 12 hours and then letting it rest for 12 hours. And so then that's equivalent to a 10 gallon per minute.
So the planning,
pumping.
the development planning is based on the daily average, presumably.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it is a 10 gallon well, or 9.5 on a sustainable daily average.
So let me just add in, Patrick. I'll just add in because I've been dealing. It's not my opinion because I don't really know. But we do have a hydrologist on staff, which is one that the municipality also uses, and it's his opinion that once the well starts pumping, then we'll start to see some trends in how the recovery of the reservoir is, and we'll be able to adjust that pumping time to accommodate that. All of our pump tests have been exceeding 20 gallons a minute. Our initial pump test was at 50. At that time, we pumped 156,000 gallons of water out of that well in a 72-hour period. The second time we pumped, we set it at 25 gallons a minute, and that period we pumped 104,000 gallons in a 72-hour period, and the reservoir sustained it. So that was last fall. I don't know, it was a pretty dry year last year. So anyway, the hydrologist, the short of it is, the hydrologist is optimistic, but he can't be optimistic when he goes forward with to the province. So that's his personal opinion.
So it's based
Yeah.
on conservative assumptions about the sustainable yield of that well.
Does that answer your question, Mike?
Yeah, no, it's good. Thank you.
Okay.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Are there any other members of the public who have questions for Patrick regarding the infrastructure work that's going on? Oop, I've got someone else coming in. I don't know that I know that our CFO does not have a formal presentation, but she is available for questions regarding finance for this project. If people have any questions regarding finance.
Yeah, I don't have a formal presentation. I can update the public at this time, though, that we do have the budget meeting scheduled for next week. It's scheduled next Wednesday, the 13th at 5 p.m. and it will be on Zoom again at the same time. We'll be presenting the full budget plan for 2024 at that time. I can just, you know, we have done a lot of talking about switching over to a more metered rate billing, a billing system that is more focused on consumption rates in all three of the districts. So that recommendation will be coming forward at that time. And as well, some of the borrowing has started to happen in order to finance the design work and soon to be the construction work. So there will be an initial parcel tax put forth for a bylaw for adoption for council this year. It won't be the full build out amount. I'm going to phase that in gradually too, to align with the draws on the borrowing. So the budget will include a smaller parcel tax this year than what it will be required once the full amount of the project costs are borrowed. So that's a little bit of an update that I can give you right now, and the full budget will be presented next Wednesday.
Does anyone have any questions regarding that?
That's good to know that you've made some progress with that, Kristen. And I don't know how many of the LAC are going to be at that meeting. I hope more than today. I'll be actually overseas, but I'm going to try and join in. So, but a little bit more complicated than usual.
Yeah, we'll have the material posted in the next couple of days.
Yeah, great. Good.
Okay, wonderful. The next thing we have on the agenda is just a reminder about the communication approach and efforts that are being made by our organization. We have these information meetings quarterly, and we have our communications team is sending emails and posting social media these events, and the material that supports these events is also shared. We have our Bluewater Park Water System Replacement Project webpage, which is included in your package. And then we have the BWP LAC at bimbc.ca email, which has Kristen and Patrick on it, along with Mike and other LAC members and myself. So any questions you have or comments you'd like to share, you can use those avenues to do so. I think. Oh, does Greta's family have anything to say? Really cool camera work going on there. No. Well, thank you again for participating in this important project. And I think I'm going to let everyone go.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Appreciate the
Thank you so
information.
much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.